Did y'all see the parachuter? That was pretty damn cool, I gotta say. That's not we got some more. Oh, look at this guy. Isn't that cool? That is amazing.
Go ahead. And do.
I wonder if he's a Trump voter. He better be. Is that it? We got anybody else coming? It's just those two. Okay, well, that's one way to get to a Donald Trump JD Vance rally, is to parachute on an American flag. I gotta say, I felt pretty cool running for vice president. The guy jumps out of an airplane with an American flag. So, you know, even on your best day, there's somebody who's gonna jump out of the plane with an American flag and make you look not nearly as cool as he is. First of all, my friends, I'm thrilled to be here. I didn't realize till we got here that we're so close to, of course, the great Army base called Fort Bragg, and that's the name of it. Not Fort whatever Kamala Harris renamed it. It's Fort Bragg, and we're proud. And I say this as a United States Marine veteran. We're thrilled to have all our soldiers and everybody who served here. Thank you for your service, and let's go make Donald Trump the next president of the United States. We got 11 days to do it. We got some Marines here too. All right. The owners of this facility over here, they said the Marines were in town doing some artillery training. And he said, when the Marines are in town, the whole building shakes. It's really loud. And I said, and all the bars run out of beer, I'm sure, when the Marines come to town. That's okay. Look, here's the thing about my job is, think about this. I've got the easiest job in American politics. I get to go around and I get to talk about the fact that when Donald Trump was president, inflation was 1.5%. People could afford groceries and people could afford housing. That's a hell of a record to run on. I get to go around talking about Donald Trump supported our police and secured the American southern border. We had low crime and we had a closed down border. That's something to brag about. And I get to go around and talk about the fact that we had take-home pay rising faster than it had in a generation in 40 years when Donald Trump was president. That's also a record to brag on. And, you know, we got a beautiful baby back here with a Make America Great Again shirt. You know, if we were part of the Kamala Harris campaign, I'd say get him registered to vote, but not until he's 18. Well, look, here's the thing, and I kind of feel bad for Governor Tim Walz, if I'm being honest with you. And I know it's you didn't expect me to stand up here and be all bipartisan, but Tim Walz has got the hardest job in American politics. Think about this. He's got to go around and try to pretend that Kamala Harris didn't cast the deciding vote on trillions of dollars in new spending, which drove inflation through the roof, but of course she did. He's got to go around and pretend that Kamala Harris did not open the American southern border when every one of us knows that's exactly what she did. And he's got to run around pretending that Kamala Harris is the candidate of change, even though she's been the vice president of the United States for 3.5 years. He's got to pretend that somehow Kamala Harris is going to solve the very problems that she created while in government over the last 3.5 years. And I think in 11 days, the state of North Carolina, we're going to send a message to Kamala Harris. You are not the candidate of change. In fact, you're fired. Go back to San Francisco where you belong. Now, again, even though I don't like Kamala Harris's policies, look at me. I'm being a nice guy tonight. I'm talking about how Tim Walz has got the toughest job in politics, and Kamala Harris, she's got one thing going for her, my friends. It's that every time Kamala Harris does an interview, I think that Donald Trump picks up about 100,000 votes. Now, if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, she did an interview with The View, and in 19 seconds in a softball interview, she blew up her entire campaign. Now this, my friends, this is the sacrifice that I make running as Vice President of the United States. I watch Kamala Harris on The View so that you don't have to. But remember Kamala's entire campaign. Her whole campaign is to pretend that she's going to solve the problems that she caused over the last 3.5 years. She'll stand up before a crowd and she'll say, on day one, we're going to tackle the affordability crisis that affects American families. And she'll say, on day one, we are going to secure that southern border. And all of us with a lick of common sense are saying, Kamala, day one was 1,400 days ago. What the hell have you been doing the whole time? So that's been the theme of Kamala Harris's campaign. Then she goes on The View. And they say, what is one thing that you would have done differently from Joe Biden over the last 4 years? And Kamala Harris says, well, nothing comes to mind. Now, in her defense, I think that could be the slogan of the Kamala Harris campaign. Nothing comes to mind. Whatever the topic is, whatever policy we're talking about, nothing comes to mind. But in 19 seconds, she blew up the entire narrative of her campaign. The dishonesty at the heart of the Kamala Harris campaign is that somehow she's going to be different for the next 4 years from what she was the first 4 years. And I don't think any person believes it. We do not believe it. The state of North Carolina is going to reject that lie in 11 days, and we're going to make Donald Trump not just the winner of North Carolina, but the president-elect of the United States of America. And I got to tell you that there are so many problems, so many issues where we could walk through Kamala Harris and her failure. We could talk about how Kamala Harris has created a schooling system where we indoctrinate children instead of educating them, and that's a disgrace. We could talk about Kamala Harris and her crazy foreign policy. It seems like we've increasingly got a war breaking out on every continent all across the world, and I happen to believe that we're going to get back to Donald Trump's policy of peace through strength. Make America safe, make America secure. And you know, these wonderful soldiers that put on the uniform and risk their lives for us every single day, that is the most precious resource we have as Americans, is we still have hundreds of thousands of young Americans who put on the uniform and fight for us. We got to use those resources and respect those resources as precious. You don't send them to every foreign conflict. You don't send them to police the world. You send them to fight for America's national security, and that's what Donald Trump's going to do. But I think the two biggest issues, the two issues where Kamala has been such a complete and utter failure are at the border and when it comes to inflation. And of course, these things are connected, and we'll talk about that in a second. But here's the thing. The average North Carolina family is $1,000 per month poorer than they were when Donald Trump was president. North Carolinians are paying 28% more for groceries. They're paying 35% more for gasoline. They're paying 45% more for housing. And they're doing it not because of an act of God, not because they did anything wrong, but because they've been failed by the leadership of Kamala Harris. So I got a very simple question. Do y'all want to pay more for gas? Do you want to pay more for groceries? Do you want to pay more for housing? Then we're going to make Kamala Harris the president of the United States? Hell no. What we're going to do, and it's going to be so much better, is we're going to unleash a golden age of American prosperity under the leadership of Donald J. Trump. And we're going to do it by doing the things that Kamala Harris didn't do. You know, every time they ask Kamala Harris a question, what is your specific plan for lowering prices for American families? What are you going to do actually to secure the southern border? She'll go, well, I grew up in a middle-class family. And it's like, okay, Kamala, that's nice, but you grew up in a middle-class family, and then what? What are you going to do to help those middle-class Americans you allegedly care so much about. Or they'll say, well, look, the world has gone to hell in a handbasket. It's chaos all over the world. How are you going to fix that problem? And she'll say, well, I used to work at McDonald's, and I made the hash browns when I worked at McDonald's, and, I used to believe that. I don't even know if that's true, actually. I think that maybe Donald Trump has worked at McDonald's for longer than Kamala Harris has. But even if it is true, she has got no agenda to run on. And every time she talks about her agenda, again, I think that Donald Trump and I pick up about 50,000, 100,000 votes. Because she goes around, and I've never, the president made this observation to me. We were on the phone a few months ago, and he's like, have you ever seen a politician going around the country saying she's going to raise people's taxes? And I was like, that's a good point. Even the ones who are lying to you, who want to raise your taxes, will at least tell you that they want to cut your taxes. Kamala Harris is the only candidate that I've ever seen who will tell you she wants to make your tax rates higher. It's ridiculous. Meanwhile, she wants to use all that money to pay foreign companies to poach our jobs and steal our industries, and I think that's got it exactly upside down. So while Kamala Harris is promising to raise your taxes and then reward companies that ship jobs overseas, Donald Trump wants to cut your taxes and punish the foreign countries that are stealing our jobs and stealing our industrial base. That's a much better pathway to prosperity. While Kamala Harris is talking about increasing regulation, she's promising that she's going to put hundreds of billions of dollars of additional regulations on the American economy. Donald Trump and I believe that we can have clean air, we can have clean water, and we can also have a growing economy that creates prosperity for all. Cut out the ridiculous regulations and focus on prosperity for the American citizens. Kamala Harris has got the worst energy policy. She has gone out there. She's banned or tried to ban fracking. She's talked about it. She's tried to make it harder to do energy leases in the United States of America. They've all done all of these ridiculous regulations that make it harder for Americans to actually use the incredible energy resources that we have right here in the United States of America. Kamala Harris wants us to buy oil and gas from tin pot dictators all over the world. Donald Trump wants us to buy oil and gas from American workers and American territories, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And when we do that, my friends, it's going to lower energy costs for American citizens. It's going to make gas, it's going to make heat in your house more affordable. I know it doesn't get quite as cold in North Carolina winters as it does in Ohio winters, but it still gets pretty cold, right? So we want to make it easier for you to heat your home in the winter. We want to make it easier for you to fill up your tank and get to work and take your kids to school in the morning. We want to make it easier for you to afford the American dream, but the only way that we're going to do that, the only way we're going to make the American dream more affordable is to fire the current leadership of Washington, D.C. and put Donald Trump back where he belongs. Now, of course, the biggest difference, and that's a lot to say because there's a lot of differences between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Kamala Harris is, of course, more of the same on this wide open southern border, and Donald Trump is saying, my friends, we're going to shut it down. We're going to close down that border. We're going to build the wall. We're going to reimpose deportations, and we're going to put American citizens back in charge of their own country. And it's hard to overstate how bad Kamala Harris has been on this. From the moment she came into the Oval Office, she actively bragged about undoing Donald Trump's successful border policies. She said, we're going to suspend deportations. She said that we're going to make it harder for people who are illegally in this country to get taken out of this country. She said it was compassionate to allow the Mexican drug cartels free reign over the United States of America. You know what I think real compassionate is? Putting the interests of your citizens first and cutting out the terrible sex trafficking and drug trafficking the Mexican drug cartels have been doing in this country. But she's not just rolling out the red carpet for illegal aliens in this country. Kamala Harris is also promising to give them benefits paid for by the American taxpayer. She has the audacity. Everywhere she goes, it's the most dishonest thing she does in her campaign. She has the audacity to accuse Donald Trump of wanting to go after Social Security when she is trying to give Social Security to illegal aliens. You want to bankrupt the United States of America? You want to bankrupt Social Security? Give it to illegal aliens, which is exactly what Kamala Harris is proposing to do. She talks about how Donald Trump wants to take away Medicare. Donald Trump has fought to protect Medicare his entire life as a leader of this country. Kamala Harris is promising illegal aliens will get access to Medicare. And not just that, but she'll pay using your tax dollars. She'll pay for illegal aliens who commit violent crimes to get sex changes on taxpayer dime. It's crazy. It's hard to believe that even 10 years ago, we would have had an American Democrat running on this disgusting open borders agenda. Now, Donald Trump and I, of course, we've got a different message. To people who have come into this country illegally, our message is very clear. Pack your bags, because in 4 months, you're going back home. You know, there's so many problems that come from this wide open southern border. There's the fentanyl problem. We got 100,000 of our citizens dying every single year. Most of them are dying from fentanyl overdoses. It's the biggest cause of drug overdose in the United States of America. We've got schools in the state of North Carolina that are overwhelmed with children who don't even speak English because they were brought here by illegal aliens. Now, what does it do to the education quality of our own children when you put thousands of people in the schools who don't even speak their language? We know what that means. That means administrators, that means teachers, that means people who are going to focus on illegal aliens instead of American citizens. And look, I don't begrudge anybody who wants to come to the United States of America and have a better life, but I think two things. Number one, they ought to do it properly. Come through the legal channels, come through the right way, like millions of people have done in the United States of America. But more importantly, I do not think that the leadership of the United States, that the compassion of our leaders should be focused anywhere but on the best interests of the American citizenry who belong in this country. That's why American leaders exist, is to look after the interests of the American nation. Now, I want to say a couple more things. I want to recognize some people, but I know we've got some reporters here. We're going to, let them ask some questions, and I'll answer a few questions. I want to give a shout out to you guys. Have a great lieutenant governor. We've got. Sorry, Mark isn't here. We've got Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg. He's not Lieutenant Governor. Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg. Keith, could you raise your hand for us? He's somewhere around here. He's been one of the best defenders that I've ever seen of Donald Trump. He's been a great patriot for the United States of America. And of course, he's a great public servant. General Kellogg, thank you for being here. We've got the state GOP chair somewhere around here. Raise your hand. There we are, way back in the back. He's a tall guy. But you look at the early voting numbers. You look at how much we're turning out in big ways in the Republican Party. We are doing a really good job in the state of North Carolina, and we got to keep our pedal to the metal. The one thing I worry about is, I don't want folks to get complacent. We got 11 days to go, and we know the Democrats are going to pull every trick in the book to try to make Kamala Harris the president of the United States, and that means that we've got to work our tails off for the next 11 days to make sure that our guy, the people's president, Donald J. Trump, wins this election and takes back this country. Let me say a couple more things just about that. I want you to write this website down or remember this website. I want to look at it just to make sure I get it right. swampthevoteusa.com. And I want to repeat it, swampthevoteusa.com. When I talk about putting the pedal to the metal, that website is a big part of it. Because on that website, you can check your registration. You can check where your polling location is. You can make sure that your absentee ballot, if you've requested it, is coming to the right place. You can make sure that your registration is updated. We got to do everything, my friends, because, look, I'm a big fan of election day over election season, but as President Trump says, it is what it is. We've got to take advantage of every method to vote that is out there, because if Kamala Harris is doing that for her folks, then we have got to be using what we have available to get out there and to make sure that our guy is the next president of the United States. So get out there and vote. Whether it's early, whether it's election day, whether it's by mail, just make sure you get out there and vote. And here's the thing. I don't want you to just vote once. My request is that you get out there and vote 10 times. You guys are like, well, we don't do that. We're Republicans. We only vote once. We only do it the legal way. But here's the answer to vote. Here's the legitimate way. The legal way to vote 10 times is you take yourself to the polls and then you get 9 of your friends and family to go along with you. That's the way we're going to vote 10 times. Let's think about this. You look at the margins that are projected in some of these states. I mean, we could win or lose. Let's be honest. We could win or lose the state of North Carolina by a couple thousand votes. You know what that means? That means none of us want to wake up on November the 6th and be saying to ourselves, we could have done a little bit more. Here's some nightmare fuel for you. Let's say you wake up on November the 6th and Donald Trump has lost the state of North Carolina by 400 votes. Then you're going to ask yourself, what could I have done? If every single person just here today had gotten one extra person to the polls, that would be the difference between President Donald Trump and President Kamala Harris. So let's get out there and do everything that we can to get our guy across the finish line. The country is relying on us. Let's work and make it happen. One final thing. I know most people use social media some form. Maybe you just text, maybe you just call people. Whatever your favorite method of talking to your fellow citizens, make sure you tell them why you're voting for Donald Trump. Okay, whether it's X or Instagram or whatever you use, make sure people know why you're voting for Donald Trump. Because look, Kamala Harris and her allies in the corporate media, they're never going to tell the truth about this campaign. They're never going to tell the truth about our candidate, but you know who can tell the truth? We can. We can get out there to our neighbors, to our friends, to our family, and talk about why we're making Donald Trump the next president of the United States. I know that this is all, look, I know all of you are doing it, but ask yourself, we can do everything that we can, or we can do just a little bit over the next 11 days, and every single one of us needs to do everything we can to elect Donald J. Trump the next president of the United States. I know I'm working hard. I know you will too.
Yeah.
Thank you. One final thought I'm gonna leave you with is, I did a town hall yesterday with Chris Cuomo on News Nation, and it was interesting. A woman asked me a question that made me think a little bit just about, since I became the vice presidential nominee, I've lost a few friends. My wife and I have lost a few friends. And I think that something that is true of most of us and maybe all of us in this room is, even if we disagree with somebody politically, we would never cast aside a friend or a family member over politics. And I think it's important to point that out, because what's going on right now, of course, is, look, I think Kamala Harris legitimately is a crazy person. I mean, to the extent that she has any ideas, any original thoughts about how to govern this country, I think it's a disaster. We got to remember that most of our fellow citizens are not Kamala Harris, and thank God for that. We got to remember that there are friends and family members that may disagree with us. Maybe people who have tried, I imagine pretty much every person in this room has lost a friend over their vocal support of Donald Trump. I think that's a disgrace. And when people talk about how to heal the country, I think number one is we got to make Donald Trump the next president of the United States. That's the first step to healing this country. The second step to healing this country is we've got to kick out leaders who try to censor their fellow Americans instead of persuade them. The biggest difference The biggest difference between Donald Trump's campaign and Kamala Harris's campaign is we're not lobbying big tech to silence our fellow Americans. We're not trying to silence people we disagree with. We may disagree with you, but we're going to try to persuade you instead of silence you because we believe in the Trump campaign, in the First Amendment. We will protect your right to speak your mind, and that's an important way of healing the divide in the country is talking to one another rather than having Kamala Harris try to shut us all up. But I think a third thing we got to do, just to repeat myself, is even if you've got somebody who's going to make a bad political decision in November, spend the next 11 days not casting them out of your life. Let's spend the next 11 days trying to persuade them that Donald Trump is the best future, not just for this country, but for them personally. And that's what I promise you I'm going to do. I'm going to try to make my argument for the next 11 days to anybody who's still open to persuasion, because here's what I believe. I believe that unless Donald Trump is the next president of the United States, Americans are still going to be unable to afford groceries. I believe that when Donald Trump is the next president of the United States, Americans, especially young Americans, are going to be able to afford to buy a home again. I believe that when Donald Trump is the next president of the United States, we are going to secure that border and stop the flow of fentanyl coming into our country. I believe that when Donald Trump is the next president of the United States, we're going to unleash a golden age of prosperity for the American people. Let's get it done, my friends. God bless you, and thank you for having me in North Carolina. Man. All righty. It's hot out here. I like that shirt, sir. Thank you, sir. We got Christ is King. I love that shirt. We got, let's take a few questions because it's getting a little hot out here. And I don't think we have any more people parachuting with American flags, so we'll turn it over to the media. We even have some Bengals fans here in Fort Bragg. First question. Go ahead.
Senator Vance, how concerned is the Trump campaign over voting access in Western North Carolina after Hurricane Helene? And do you believe in that case that if Harris wins, this state results should be challenged?
Well, should the state results be challenged? I think that what we should try to do instead is make sure that every voter's vote counts. And the state of North Carolina, all across the state of North Carolina, whether we're talking about Charlotte or New Bern or the western part of the state that was hit so hard by these hurricanes. But we got to remember something, that I really think that the American government, the American president, and the American vice president failed the people of Western North Carolina. That we could have done so much better in responding to that hurricane. The 82nd Airborne should have been in Western North Carolina the day after the storm, not a week after the storm. And I think we would have saved a lot of lives if we had done that. Now, I've talked to the state GOP chairman. I've talked to the national GOP chairman. I think that we're in a pretty good spot in Western North Carolina. But if you're in Western North Carolina, particularly if you're upset by the way your federal government has handled this terrible catastrophe, the best way for you to get out there and make your voice heard is to vote for Donald J. Trump, because he's not going to forget the people of Western North Carolina, and neither am I. Next question.
Hi, Monique John from ABC 11. Do you have specific plans to increase wages and expand healthcare access for our service members? At his last campaign event here in our area in Fayetteville, former President Donald Trump spoke on the importance of caring for our military community.
Yes, I appreciate the question, and we certainly do. And one of the things that, shockingly, I'm biased, but the media doesn't give Donald Trump enough credit for is that we did a lot, or I should say he did a lot, in his first 4 years in the White House on ensuring that veterans had more choice in health care. That's a big thing. I think all the veterans here would say they want to have more choices, we want to respect their service. And this is especially true in areas that are rural, where you don't have close access to a hospital. Why do we force a veteran to drive 95 minutes away from their home for a doctor's appointment when it would be cheaper for them and for the government for those folks to get health care 15 minutes away from where they live? We got to promote choices for veterans. Now, Donald Trump already did that, and we're going to build upon it in the second term. Unfortunately, Kamala Harris, a lot of what we've done to promote veterans' choice in healthcare, Kamala Harris has actually done away with some of that stuff. They haven't implemented it as well as they should. And because of that, I think veterans don't have nearly as many choices as they should. But there's a basic principle that underlies Donald Trump's approach to our military and to our veterans. Number one, we ought to be grateful to the people who put on a uniform, and we ought to keep the promises we make to them. Way too many broken promises to our veterans. And the second point, ma'am, is it is a national disgrace that we have 25 million illegal aliens in this country, many of whom are collecting federal benefits, when we've got veterans sleeping under bridges and on park benches. We've got to do a better job by American citizens, especially our veteran community.
Senator Vance, Hal Nunn from Hoke Media Group. Thank you for coming to Rayford, North Carolina.
Thank you, Hal. Always good to be here.
Yes, it is. Good for you to be here. Our education system in North Carolina in some areas is broken, and it's a lot of the money being spent, wasteful spending, and a lot of it at the top. Our staff, our teachers, our workers are working their tails off, but they just can't seem to get over the hump on grades, reading, writing, and math. We love parents' choice,
yes,
but we want to make education better. How are we going to do that?
Yes, sir. Well, such an important question, and we got to remember, folks, that 40 years ago, the American education system was the envy of the entire world. Whether you were rich or poor, whether you were rural or urban, we gave kids such good educations that we were leading the world in math scores and reading scores. We had the best educated population because you know what we did? We focused on teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, and not political BS that has no place in our children's schools. Now, you talk about spending. We actually spend more per pupil than almost any education system in the entire world, and we have to ask ourselves, what are we getting from it? We're getting 40th in reading, 41st in math. We're not giving a good education to our children, and most importantly, our kids are not going to have good opportunities in life if they start out with a bad education. So we got to say, number one, we want to give parents more choices in schools. Let parents choose where they send their schools. The money ought to follow the child around, not a broken school system if that kid is stuck in a broken school. That's principle number one. And sir, the final thing I'll say, principle number two, is we have got to stop using the taxpayers of the people in this beautiful facility to fund political BS in our schools. I think a lot of you would be shocked if you realize that, why can't our kids add 2 + 2, but they know that there are 87 genders? Why is that happening? It's happening because our tax money goes to fund bureaucrats at the Department of Education. Bureaucrats that are putting radical curricula into our schools instead of teaching our kids what they need to be successful, happy, and healthy people. We got to get back to the basics in education, and Donald Trump and I are going to fight for that every single day. Thank you, sir, for your question. We'll do one more. I'll leave you with a thought, and then we'll hit the road.
Hi, Senator Vance. Joey Pierre from the Fayetteville Observer. Just one question for you. What can Trump-Vance presidency do to assist areas affected by hurricanes in North Carolina and in the southern and in the South?
Yes, sir. Well, I obviously hope we're going to be in a few weeks victorious, number one. But number two, Western North Carolina is hopefully going to be in the recovery phase of the campaign, right? That's where I want us to be. And by the way, I feel extremely confident about victory in the state of North Carolina, and I feel confident in victory nationally. I worry a little bit. I'm less confident, if I'm being honest with you, about how well Western North Carolina is going to recover with a broken bureaucracy that's managing this process. So here's what we got to do is, number one, for the people of Western North Carolina, we've got to make sure that they're getting the resources that they need to address their homes, to fix their homes, to maybe get new homes because so many people have had their homes completely destroyed, to replace the belongings that were taken by the flood. And then, of course, whatever help they need, because a lot of folks out there are grieving a loved one, frankly, a loved one that wouldn't, I think, have passed away if the federal government had been smarter and quicker about the response. But the most important principle is look, I've seen a lot of crazy theories out there on the internet. The biggest problem that I saw in the federal response to the hurricane, it was bureaucratic incompetence. It's that you've got 8 different agencies, each of them with different pies of the recovery thing, and they're all not working together. They're sometimes competing with one another, or you got one person who should be doing something, but they think the other agency is doing that. And most importantly, the 82nd Airborne, the U.S. military, should have been in Western North Carolina the day after the storm hit. That's the most important thing. So what I promise to the people of North Carolina, to the people of the United States of America, is that when Donald Trump is president, and when you have, because you're going to have it from time to time, a catastrophic storm, our response is going to be quick, it's going to be efficient, and we're going to try to save as many lives and help people recover as well as we can. God bless you for the question. Thank you. All righty. Let me leave you with this one final thought. And again, I'm so grateful for all of you being out here. I'm so grateful for your support, and I'd encourage you to do everything that you can, from knocking on doors to calling your neighbors, to get President Trump across the finish line. Because I think it's so important to remember why we're doing this. And I think sometimes if you're caught up in the red shirt versus blue shirt of politics, look, we're going to beat Kamala Harris and the Democrats, and it's going to be very fun to beat Kamala Harris and the Democrats. I'm going to enjoy November the 5th very much. But the point of beating Kamala Harris and the Democrats is to give the American people the leadership that they actually deserve, and they just don't have it right now. And I've met so many people. I could tell you so many stories about people that I've met on the campaign trail. Let me tell you one in particular, because this woman, she was a retiree, and she was raising her grandkids, and she reminded me, frankly, of my grandmother, because I was raised by my mamaw when I was a kid, because my mom struggled with opioid addiction. And so this woman told me she's raising these grandkids. Her husband is about to retire, but he's still got a couple years left. And for 40 years, for their entire marriage, they had done a special thing on Friday night. It was steak night. And I'm not talking about going to a fancy steakhouse. I'm talking about going to a grocery store, her husband grilling a steak. And as all of us know, it's those special rituals that we do with our friends and our family that actually make life worthwhile. So in good times and bad, for this woman, for 40 years, Friday night was steak night until last year. Because last year, the groceries got too expensive, and they were too worried about whether they would be able to put food on the table for those grandbabies that they cut out steak night. And the woman told me just matter-of-factly, she wasn't complaining about it, she wasn't whining about it. But what I thought is, we need to have the kind of leadership so that our own people can afford to get a nice steak for their family once a week. We need the kind of leadership that makes it so that whether you're rich or poor, if you work hard and play by the rules, you can turn on the heat in your home in the middle of a cold winter night. We need the kind of leadership where we don't have so many Americans dying of fentanyl overdoses because we're securing the border and waging war against the Mexican drug cartels. We need, in other words, the leadership of Donald Trump, and we don't need it primarily because it's going to be fun to beat Kamala Harris. We need it because the American citizenry, our neighbors, our friends, our fellow Americans, they deserve better leadership from their government. In 11 days, let's make sure they get exactly that. God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Not bad, North Carolina. We brought it, didn't we? Did okay, guys.
Oh. Where's the open bar? Is that because you guys are having some fun? It's good to be here. Thank you for doing this, Laura.
Oh my gosh, I'm honored to do it. And as you heard, and I know you know this already, this is my home state. Do you guys remember, JD, you probably remember this, that Hillary Clinton said that North Carolina was going to be her firewall in 2016, and Donald Trump blew right through that firewall, didn't he? It was amazing. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you saw, Laura, because obviously Kamala Harris in the final days of the campaign, she's bringing out the big guns.
Oh.
And a couple of days ago, she enlisted as her chief surrogate on CNN a person who knows how to beat Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton. So when you're relying on Hillary Clinton to tell you how to beat Donald Trump, your campaign's not going too well. And I think that's exactly what's true for Kamala Harris.
Well, we know that. Prove it 11 days from now for sure. But it only works if everybody here gets out and votes and make sure that they don't go vote alone, right, JD?
That's exactly right. So what I always say, Laura, is don't just vote 10 times. And then, of course, because we're Republicans, people get a little uncomfortable and say, well, we only vote once, right? But here's the legal way to vote 10 times is you get yourself to the polls and then you take 9 of your friends and family with you. So
Amen.
To be clear to the reporters in the back, we don't want the Washington Post headline to be J.D. Vance encourages voter fraud in North Carolina. I'm talking about taking your friends and family to the polls because we know that the corporate media and Kamala Harris and all of her allies, they're never going to tell the truth about Donald J. Trump, but you all can tell the truth about Donald J. Trump. And if we do that, we're going to win North Carolina. We're going to turn the whole country red, and we're going to make Trump the next president.
Love it. Absolutely. All right. So we have some audience members today who I think have a few questions for you. And I don't know that these are going to be as tough as the ones you're used to getting on TV, but I know you're prepared for these. So are you Kelly?
Kelly.
All right, Kelly, have at it.
Hey, Senator Vance. Kelly from Monroe. Just want to thank you for your service, first of all.
Thank you, Kelly.
Well, I'm on.
And thanks to all the veterans in the room for their service, because I'm sure there's a lot of God bless you guys.
I'm also a Master Sergeant here in the Air National Guard out of Charlotte.
Thank you, man.
Amazing. And thank you to our law enforcement in the room as well.
I just got back from my state active duty on Friday, got all my orders, and I've been in Western North Carolina, mostly the Asheville area. And
God bless you, man. That's awesome.
our mission there, I work with the Army, and I want to say this as an Air Force guy. The Army was amazing to work with. We're brothers and sisters in this, and we did so much good while we were there. And I just want to say, you know, I thank them a lot for what we did. Our mission was to go out and knock on doors, do welfare checks on the elderly, the poor, people in rough situations. We delivered food, water, essentials, and more. We did a lot. My question to you would be, what I've noticed as a 28-year vet, without getting too deep into it, but the little bit of coordination with the FEMA, I can see can get better.
Yep.
As the National Guard, we like to go in there and do our mission, get it done and get out and help these people as fast as possible. And there's a lot of people that need help, and there's a lot of people willing to help and a lot of supplies there. I think we could do a better job getting those people what they need faster.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Well, amen to that, Kelly. And thank you for doing what you're doing. I know that when you guys show up, especially in some of these distressed areas where people feel left behind and forgotten, when they see you there, they feel better and they know their fellow Americans care about you. So God bless you and everybody that helped out in Western North Carolina. Let me put it simply, man, we could do so much better. And when President Trump is back in the White House, we will do so much better for the people of Western North Carolina. Look, we got to be honest. First of all, what happened with the federal response was pure bureaucratic incompetence. What you needed, think about this, in 2010, right after the earthquake in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, the 82nd Airborne was in Haiti 2 days later. The 82nd Airborne was an hour away from Western North Carolina and didn't get there for a week. That is a disgrace. And it's a disgrace from the military leadership, speaking particularly of Kamala Harris, because we know that the members of the 82nd Airborne would have been thrilled to go the day after the hurricane hit. Why didn't Kamala Harris and Joe Biden order them to do so? The fact that they didn't shows that Kamala Harris should be nowhere near the Oval Office of the United States of America. But it's just straightforward incompetence. When you have these different agencies, right? We've got all these 3- and 4-letter agencies. They've got a job to do. And look, let's be honest, some of them on the ground are doing a very good job, But when you have this bureaucrat who's got this territory and this bureaucrat that's got that territory, sometimes what you need to cut through all the red tape and to cut through all the garbage is you need leadership. You need the president and the vice president to show up and say, your job is to save as many lives as possible and then to help people rebuild. What you don't need is a president who was on the beach and a vice president who was raising money in California. You got to have people focused on American citizens and helping them out. And I just want to say one thing about this, Kelly. Obviously, thank God this storm is in the past. Now we've got to help people in Western North Carolina rebuild and try to make as much out of a very tough situation. That's where we are now. But we got to remember that Western North Carolina is part of the Appalachian region of this country, and Appalachia has been left behind and forgotten by our leaders for 40, 50 years. What I promise you is that when Donald J. Trump is the leader of this nation, Appalachia will not be forgotten. Donald Trump will remember who he serves and who he leads, and he's going to fight for the people of Western North Carolina.
Couldn't agree with you more. One of the things I will say that I saw with my own eyes, I got photos and videos from so many of my friends and family, JD, who live in Wilmington, North Carolina,
Yep.
6 hours away from the mountains, who were loading up their cars with as much as they could, supplies, and driving across the state to deliver it. It was so beautiful to see the American spirit come out in the midst of a disaster like that. It really shows you that we really are the greatest country on earth. We have the greatest people.
Amen.
We love each other. We support each other. And with a great leader at the top, we can do anything at all. Everything's possible.
That's right. Got to fix the broken leadership of Washington, D.C. That's what we're going to do.
And we will.
That's why we're here.
All right, I think we have Beth with a question. Where is Beth? Oh, there she is. You're right there.
Senator Vance, my name is Beth, and I'm from right here, Monroe. And like many parents, I'm concerned about immigration. Yesterday, the front page of the New York Post reported that last year, the benefits we are providing illegal immigrants cost us $150 billion. To put that in context, the entire budget for the state of North Carolina last year was $33 billion. So how soon will President Trump close the border?
Thank you. You know, I think that President Trump will close the border. I'm just guessing here, right about January 20th, 2025 is when Donald Trump is going to close the border, Beth. And you know what? One of the things, Beth, the press does and Kamala Harris's campaign does is they try to make us feel like bad people for believing in border security. They say that border security is not compassionate, but then they miss the fact that 320,000 children have effectively gone missing thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. It's not compassionate to those children, and it sure as heck isn't compassionate to the American citizens who are suffering under this terrible border crisis. Now, we talk all the time about fentanyl, and we should, because it's 100,000 American citizens who are dying because of this poison the cartels are bringing into our country. We don't talk as much about the fact that hospital wait times, emergency room wait times have gone up radically in the United States of America because we've got a lot of illegal aliens who are getting put in front of line of American citizens. We talk about the price of housing, which has gone up 40%. That's what happens when you have 25 million people and you put them in homes that ought by right go to American citizens. We talk about schools. What happens to the education for an American child when you drop hundreds of people into their school district who don't even speak the language? That distracts critical resources from the children of American citizens. We're going to have better education, better health care, lower housing, and we're going to tackle this fentanyl crisis because Donald J. Trump is going to close the border, and we're going to start the very first day. Thank you, Beth.
We built over 500 miles of border wall the first time. You can guarantee yourself Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are going to complete the wall.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right.
I know. All right. Mike is up with the next question. Where's Mike? Hey, Mike.
Hey, how you guys? Hi, Senator Vance. My name is Mike, and I own an insurance agency in North Carolina. Like everything under Biden and Harris, auto, home, and business insurance costs have skyrocketed the last 3 years, not to let alone energy and labor costs. What is your plan to help small businesses and especially small town America?
Thank you, Mike. It's a very important question. I appreciate you asking it. Look, the first and most important thing that we're going to do to lower prices, and obviously it benefits American consumers, it benefits American workers, and it benefits American business owners. And President Trump, it's the simplest, but it's actually the most important policy proposal to lower prices, and that's drill, baby, drill. He says it all the time because it matters. And I think some don't appreciate that when the energy goes up, everything becomes more expensive, right? Think about it. If the truck driver who's delivering the food to the grocery store is paying 45% more for diesel, then we're all paying more for groceries. If the guy delivering the lumber to the construction site is paying 50% more for gas, then we're all paying more for housing. That's what higher energy costs do, is they make it hard for us to afford a good life. Now, insurance rates. Why are insurance rates so high, especially in automotive insurance? And this goes back to Beth's question. It's because of illegal immigration. When you drop millions upon millions of people into your country, a lot of them are driving around. That makes it riskier to drive a car, which means that our insurance rates go up. We saw this, by the way, in Springfield, Ohio, where folks in Springfield are paying skyrocketing rates for car insurance because their communities have been flooded with people who don't have the right to be in the United States of America. So one, Mike, we're going to lower energy costs and lower all the costs that depend on energy. We're also going to secure the border and make America safe again, which is going to lower insurance costs, but it's going to do a lot more beyond that.
You know, on the way here, JD, I noticed at a local gas station, it was $3.10 a gallon. Anybody remember the low when Donald Trump was in the White House? $1.87 a gallon was how much gas costs when Donald Trump was in the White House. There's something that I don't think gets talked enough about, but our strategic petroleum reserve. Remember what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did to that? And can you explain to everybody why that's important, why it's there? And will we refill it so that if we need it, it is available?
Yeah, so, Laura, this is such a good question. This is the scandal that the American media never talks about in the run-up to the 2022 midterms, because Americans were rightly very angry about high gas prices. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they drained the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. That is the reserve of oil that we have in case, God forbid, we get into a war with a foreign adversary. They drained it to lower the cost of gasoline, to hide from their own bad energy policies. And of course, as soon as they left office, what happened? Gas is now $3.10 a gallon at this gas station down the street. And you think it's not going to get worse? If Kamala Harris gets 4 more years, gas prices, we're going to be praying for $3.10 gasoline. It's going to be $5 a gallon, because she has declared war on American energy, and she has said herself she wants this country to go completely gasoline-free by 2040, or at least her surrogates have said that. That's going to bankrupt this country. It's going to drive up the cost of energy. But think about this. Kamala Harris drained our strategic reserve of oil so that she could win an election. What else would she do to win an election, and how much more would she sacrifice your interests and our prosperity for her own political gain? We can't reward that kind of politics, which is why I think we ought to send Kamala Harris back to San Francisco, where she belongs, and not to the Oval Office. And Laura, You're a North Carolina girl. I'm an Ohio guy. We know what Kamala Harris wants to do and what Donald Trump wants to do. Donald Trump wants to make America great again. Kamala Harris wants to make America California. With sky-high energy prices, runaway inflation, we don't want that. Let's go the Trump way. Let's make America great again and keep America clean, safe, and secure.
Yeah, don't California my America,
That's
please.
right.
Do not do that. Okay, we've got another question from Al. Al is right over here. Hello, Al.
Good afternoon, Senator. My name is Al Alexander. I'm from Harrisburg, North Carolina. I served in the United States Air Force for many years.
God bless you, Al. Thank you.
My question is about Social Security. And I heard many people around here, not here, but elsewhere, say that Republicans want to end Social Security. What I want to know is, what is the plan to protect Social Security?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, Al, again, a very good, a very important question, and thank you for your service. And let me say this, that when Kamala Harris says that we're going to go after Social Security, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Donald Trump was president for 4 years. He already protected Social Security, and he's going to do it again. Now, here's what we're going to do, Al. The most important thing, the biggest unexpected strain on our Social Security reserves is that we have got billions and billions of dollars going to illegal aliens who have no right to be in this country. Social Security ought to go to the people who paid into Social Security, not the people who don't have the right to be here. That's number one. And the second thing, Al, I mean, look, Social Security, if you get the illegal aliens off of Social Security and you stop politicians from raiding the Social Security budget to pay for their ridiculous spending, we actually can very easily get Social Security on a sustainable pathway, but we've got to stop people like Kamala Harris from, one, trying to give it to illegal aliens, and two, raiding Social Security to pay for her radical ideas. We do those two things, we're going to protect Social Security. And Al, that's exactly what we want to do. We want to keep America's promises to our seniors. Donald J. Trump believes that as much as anybody in this country. He's already done it. He's going to do it again. Thank you, Al.
You know, JD, while we're on the subject of lies from the Democrats, I mean, I don't know how much time y'all got tonight, but let's quickly just make it very clear for anybody watching, listening, or anybody want to tell your friends the lie of Project 2025. And why is it that the Democrats would go out of their way, knowing it is a lie, JD, knowing that Donald Trump has said this has nothing to do with him? Why would they go on and continue to tell this lie?
Well, Laura, you just asked me to enter the mind of Kamala Harris, and that's a very dark place. But my guess is she talks about this because she's got nothing else to talk about, and she can't run on a record, right? Kamala Harris can't run on lowering the price of groceries because groceries went up by 25% under her leadership. She can't run on lowering the price of housing because housing is 40% more expensive because of her leadership. And we know she can't run on closing the border because she opened the border. So what she's going to do is lie about Donald J. Trump instead of tell the American people that she screwed up and they shouldn't send her anywhere near the Oval Office. Now, I happen to think that if Kamala really believes what she says, Laura, and she really wants to lower the price of groceries and lower the price of housing and secure the southern border, she is welcome to vote for Donald J. Trump. There's 11 days left, and we'd welcome. But the spirit of bipartisanship is alive in this hangar. We would welcome the support of Kamala Harris. I think it'd be the most honest thing she'd done in public life. But Laura, and Al, your question made me think about this. So Laura and I both have toddlers, right, or close to it. Your kids are a little bit older. I've got a 7, 4, and a 2-year-old. And the thing I'll tell you about toddlers is that when they lie kind of like Kamala Harris does. And here, let me give you an example, okay? So I'm a baker. You may be surprised that me and my 4-year-old.
I am too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to culinary school.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
I know. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt
no.
your story. I love that we
So,
know this about each other now.
I'm a baker. So my 4-year-old boy and I were baking an Oreo cake a couple weeks ago. And you've got to like break up the Oreos and put it in the cake. And I go to the bathroom and I come back and half the Oreos are gone. And I say, son, what happened to the Oreos? And he didn't kind of say, oh, the dog ate them or oh, one of my siblings ate them. He said, I didn't eat the Oreos. You did. And this, Al, is Kamala Harris is trying to bankrupt Social Security, but you talk to her about it and say, oh, no, I'm not trying to do that. You did. Or Kamala Harris, you open the border. She's actually running on the idea that the reason the border is open is not because of her policies. She's been in power the last 4 years. It's because of Donald J. Trump. That kind of lying is so brazen and so dishonest. Only 4-year-olds and only Kamala Harris accuse us of doing the very thing she's already done.
I love it. Or she'll just rip it off. Like no tax on tips. She'll just rip it off if she needs to, right? All right, next question is Joe. Where is Joe? Hello.
Hello. Hey, Senator Vance.
How you doing, man?
Welcome back to North Carolina. My name's Joe. I'm here with my 3 boys, Sam, Jack, and Joey.
Good-looking crew?
Yes. We're from Cornelius, North Carolina. I'm also a U.S. Army veteran, and thank you for your service. But more importantly is I'm a Christian, and we're a Christian family.
Here.
Jesus is Lord. Millions of Christians are expected not to vote in this election. What is your message to Christians, leading up to 11 days to the election?
Yes, sir. Well, again, Joe, thank you for your service and thanks for bringing your family to such an important event. I hope that you guys don't look like you're old enough to vote yet. Is that right? Well, if I was Kamala Harris, I'd say register him anyway, but it's okay. We'll wait. We'll wait, Joe. But I've heard this statistic, Joe, that 30 million church-going Christians aren't even registered to vote in the United States of America. And I really think look, we've got to get people who care about religious liberty out there to vote. I mean, did you all see this? It was really sick, and I don't even understand it, but one of Kamala Harris's chief allies, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, is pretending to give Holy Communion, and she's like doing it with a Dorito with some weird podcast star. Like, the only reason you would do that is to slap Christians in the face and insult them. And the people that are trying to insult your faith, they're sure as heck not going to protect your faith when the time comes to protect it. And that's what I'd say, whatever the issue is, right? I mean, Kamala Harris wants to force Christian hospitals to perform really, like late-term abortions, right? She's actually proposed that. They want to force nuns to close up shop because the nuns won't do their ministry the way that Kamala Harris wants them to. I happen to believe that we're a big enough country where we can respect people's religious right of conscience, let them practice their faith how they want to. Don't tell the federal government that they get to dictate people's faith to them. And Joe, I mean, look, I'm a person of faith. I care very deeply about it. I go to church every Sunday, though sometimes not on the campaign trail because we're out of the campaign trail. But look, what do Christians care about? I mean, in my experience, they care about being able to raise their kids with their values. How about sending your kids to schools or homeschooling them where they get an education instead of an indoctrination? Right? So if you want to educate your kids as you see fit, if you'd like to be able to raise your children in the faith of your family, if you'd like to be able to teach your children that the Christian faith is true and the gospel of Jesus Christ is real, as I believe that it is, you ought to have the right to do that in the United States of America. And the final point I'll make about this show is these guys are going out there aggressively insulting Christians with everything they do. It's not just Gretchen Whitmer. It's the policies they pursue, the way that they talk about Christians. Of course, there was the rally where somebody shouted something. It was a simple, I think they said, Jesus is Lord. And Kamala Harris said, you're at the wrong rally. Well, if you think Jesus is Lord, you're at the right rally right now, first of all. But I'll say this too, Joe. Even if you don't share my religious faith, I'm still going to fight for your right to practice your faith as you see fit, because my obligation is to the Constitution. It'd be good if Kamala Harris agreed.
And how about the fact that when Donald Trump got back in the White House, we could finally again say Merry Christmas. That was nice. I heard Kamala doesn't like that very much, but that's okay. You know, I am often reminded time and time again how close we are to World War III, JD. It's a very scary thing, I think, for a lot of people. And I think back to a time when Donald Trump was in the White House, first president in 82 years with no new wars under his leadership. We had the Abraham Accords, of course, in the Middle East, historic peace agreements that people said would never happen. Talk about, for a minute, if you would, why it's so important in this moment right now to have strong leadership in the White House, our commander-in-chief, the leader of the free world. We see things going on in the Middle East. We see what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. We see China, saber-rattling in the South China Sea. We see all of these things feeling rather unstable around the world. Why is it important that we have Donald Trump back there to make sure we stabilize things?
Yeah, so such a good question. And I didn't fully appreciate this, Laura, until I got into the United States Senate. And what even some of my Democrat colleagues will admit, of course, when the cameras are off, but they will admit that the bad guys all over the world, they were kind of scared of Donald Trump, right? Yep. and that fear kept a lot of aggression in check, and it kept a lot of wars that otherwise would have started from starting in the first place. And why do you have Russia invading Ukraine during Kamala Harris's watch? And why do you have Iran and Hamas attacking Israel during Kamala Harris's watch? And why do you have China saber-rattling during Kamala Harris's watch? It's because who could possibly fear Kamala Harris? No one, right? I don't even say that to make fun of Kamala Harris, a little bit for that reason. But more importantly, think about this. This is a woman who is terrified of softball media interviews, and we think that she's going to sit in a room with Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. Look, Laura, I was raised by a grandmother who was a devout Christian, by the way, but also loved the F word. She was a woman of many tensions. But my grandmother was tough. She was smart and she was tough. I can't imagine having somebody like Kamala Harris, who's terrified of her own friendly media negotiating on behalf of the United States. You think it's bad now, and it is bad now. It's only going to get so much worse because this stuff compounds on itself, right? One bad domino falls, and then another bad domino falls, and then all of a sudden, God forbid, you're in a major world conflict. And the other thing that Donald Trump, I think, the president really appreciated something that many American leaders have forgotten. President Trump appreciated that the most precious resource we have in the United States of America, and I know we've got a lot of folks here today who fit this description, is the people who put on the uniform and are willing to sacrifice their lives for their fellow citizens. That's an amazing thing. But what do you do with precious resources? You use it wisely. You don't ask our military to be the policemen of the world. You ask them to be the defenders of the United States Constitution and the people who swear allegiance to it. And that is important. That peace through strength approach, but also the smart diplomacy, right? Peace through strength, smart diplomacy. That's the record of Donald Trump. And Laura, you remember this, I'm sure, better than I do. But remember when they said, the media and people like Kamala Harris said that we'd have World War III?
Oh.
Again, it's another, you stole the cookie, not me. Their on the verge of World War III, and they have the audacity to say that Donald Trump, the president of peace through strength, is anything but. We need to get back to stability in the world, and Donald Trump is the only guy who's going to deliver it.
Absolutely. All right. We have time for one last question. Our lucky last question is coming from John. Hey, John.
Hi, Senator Vance and Chairwoman Trump. I'm John. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm currently in law school. And I'm worried about the opportunities for the future. And under Sleepy Joe and Kamala, inflation has been catastrophic and the economy is a disaster.
Sure.
So what are the Trump-Vance team going to be able to do to bring down this record-hot inflation and create more economic opportunities for younger Americans?
So I appreciate... So I appreciate the question. I want to answer it. Before I do, could we just give a round of applause to the great RNC co-chair, Lara Trump, for doing such a good job for our party. She really...
Thank you. They're not cheating in this election, I can tell you that much.
That's right. But one of the things, Laura, I think you've done is give people faith in this election. And obviously nothing's ever going to be perfect. It never was. It never will be. But we are in a much better position in 2024 thanks to the leadership of Lara Trump. So get out there and vote. Get out there and vote.
Yeah.
Just don't clap. Get out there and vote, because we're winning North Carolina, but we're only going to keep winning it if we work our tails off for the next 11 days. Now, I want to answer your question, man, because, look, in some ways I'm heartbroken at the sentiment behind the question, because the American dream, man, is the story of my life. I was raised by my grandmother. We didn't always have a whole lot of money, but we always had faith in the promise of this country. I genuinely believed, even when times were really tough, that because this was the greatest country in the world, so long as I worked hard and played by the rules, I would be able to achieve my dreams. And to me, that was above running for office or starting a business or writing a book. That was getting married and having a family. And that's the way in which this country has been best to me. Is we've got 3 beautiful little kids. You know, there's sometimes hellions, but we love them anyway. And that's the way in which the country's been so good to me. And what I worry about is, unless we get better leadership, man, the next generation is not going to be able to talk about the future in the way that I was able to talk about the future when I was growing up in Middletown, Ohio. I think there are a couple things that we got to do. So number one is, you've got to make it easier for young Americans to build wealth in this country. We've got way too many Americans, way too many young people. They're mired in credit card debt. Credit card delinquencies have shot through the roof over the last few months. They have no prospect of owning a home. They have no prospect of really building a life. I don't want young Americans to be paupers, to be permanent renters in the society built by their parents and grandparents. I want them to have a life. And that life, I think, starts with owning a stake in this country. So to be very specific, we want to do a few things. Number one, like I said earlier, we're going to drill, baby, drill to lower energy costs, but also to create a lot of good jobs in the energy sector. And also that'll make it easier to manufacture in the United States of America. The biggest cost for our manufacturers is often energy. If we lower energy costs, we're going to create a Donald Trump golden age of prosperity in the United States of America. And that wealth is going to flow to everybody, young, old, rich, and poor. That golden age of prosperity is fundamentally why Donald Trump is running for president this time around. We're going to do it. We got to. Second thing we got to do is we've got to make it easier for young people to buy a home, right? Here's what he's going to do. Number one, we're going to lower interest rates so that people can afford to buy homes again. Mortgage interest rates way too high. Number two, because we've got a lot of illegal aliens in this country that are occupying homes that ought to go to young Americans, we're going to deport people, and we're going to get a border back in this country to make sure American homes go to American citizens. And then the third thing that we're going to do, and President Trump, it's one of the biggest and starkest differences between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And there's a lot of them. But Kamala Harris actively brags about making it easier to ship American jobs overseas and to raise taxes on working Americans. And think about this. I mean, I've never seen a politician, President Trump and I were talking about this a few weeks ago. I've never seen a politician actively say she wants to raise your taxes. Now, sometimes they do want to raise your taxes, but they lie to you. Kamala Harris is out there saying, we're going to eliminate big tax cuts for the American workers. We're going to raise the taxes of the American people. Donald Trump thinks that's exactly upside down. Here's what we're going to do when President Trump is back in the White House. We're going to cut taxes for American workers and penalize the companies that are shipping American jobs overseas. That's how you create prosperity for the next generation. That's what we're going to do. Thanks, man.
So just to go back to what I said earlier, and I'm happy to report as of about a week ago, we have trained 230,000 people in this country.
Wow.
But wait, there's more. We have decided that it's time we send a clear message. We're not going to tiptoe around these things. If you're a person who is going to cheat in an election, we will find you, we'll track you down, and we'll prosecute you to the full extent of the law. And if you are illegally voting in our elections, JD, and you are a person who is not a legal citizen and we find out you're voting, we're going to prosecute you to the full extent of the law. That means you're leaving this country.
That's important.
And I'll just say, the system is working. I get texts and phone calls, you can imagine, all the time since early voting has started. And we are identifying problems as they happen. There were 2,500 ballots we found in Lancaster County just yesterday that were fake ballots. Our team identified them. We got rid of them. And everybody knows what to look out for because we've trained everybody very well.
Awesome.
They know
Awesome.
not to try it this time around. So we feel very good. But to close this up tonight, JD, I just want to say thank you to you specifically, because I can appreciate probably more than anyone what it's like to get thrust out into this. No one appreciates that more than our family. You have been a champion. You have been a rock star. We are so happy that you are going to be our next vice president of the United States.
And fix it.
And I always like to give everybody just a little something to leave with. If you guys need to get a little hyped up over the next 11 days, do yourself a favor. Go look up on YouTube all the videos, JD, of all the folks in the mainstream media on November 8th, 2016, reporting that Donald Trump was winning state after state after state. Donald Trump wins Ohio. Donald Trump wins Florida. Donald Trump wins North Carolina.
Fair.
Y'all go back. Take a look at those. Get ready, because that's the kind of heat and energy we're going to be bringing on November 5th. So, JD.
Exactly right.
Would you close us out and tell the great people here of my home state of North Carolina what we need to do over the next 11 days?
Here's first of all, Laura, thanks so much for doing this, and thanks to all of you for being here. Here's what we need to do over the next 11 days is get out there, vote, get your friends and family to vote, and remember who we're fighting for. I'm going to tell you just a very brief story, if I may, of a woman, a 40-year, she's a retiree, but for 40 years, her and her husband had done steak night on Friday night. And I'm not talking about buying a fancy steak at a steakhouse. I'm talking about going to the grocery store. And that was their ritual, and they did it in good times and bad until last year, because grocery prices got so high that under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's leadership, they had to give up this family ritual that gave them a lot of meaning. When we're going out there and we're working, and I know all of us are going to work as hard as we can, remember that what we're fighting for is to allow our people to live a good life in the country that all of us love. We've got the best people, the best resources, the most generous human beings anywhere in the world. The only thing that is broken about our country is the failed leadership of Kamala Harris. Let's change that and give the people a president that is fit to lead this country. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.